Bantamweight Fire. Coming up this weekend, my guy, Douglas Silva de Andrade, is taking on the Spartan Cody Stamann. If you've never watched a Fight Night Picks video, you don't know, but Douglas Silva de Andrade. I kind of have to take my media cap off for a second and put on my fan hat. I get fired the frig up for Douglas Silva de Andrade fight, so I gotta try and keep the bias away, but he's taking on Cody Stamann, and for Stamann, at one point, he was ranked 10th in the division. He was taking on Aljamain Sterling, UFC 228, Woodley versus Darren Till. And in that matchup, Zabit Magomedsharipov and Aljamain Sterling both won by Sulev stretch. So for Stamann, it's been a bounce around here for a little bit since that point. For both of these guys, you could say that they're the gatekeepers of the the good but not the great. So that's kind of where they have struggled. And if you look at it for Douglas Silva de Andrade, I mean, he also lost to Said Nurmagomedov. Now, Stamann went in for a takedown and got submitted. Douglas actually had a competitive fight against Nurmagomedov, and then Said Rakhmonov had a really competitive fight against Nurmagomedov. But for Douglas, if you look at it, he struggled primarily against guys that have been willing to wrestle with him in his fights. And if you want to stand with him, yeah, he'll eat some shots to give them, but you're probably going to be the nail and not the hammer when you fight Douglas.
And that's the weird thing about Andrade. This is a matchup that does kind of favor him and his skill set, because we have seen him go out there against wrestlers with kind of limited skill sets on the feet, right? And I would say that's what Cody Stamann is. Is he going to wow you with his boxing?
Hold on, brother. He's gotten a lot better. Since Stamann switched it up to Extreme Couture in 2019, his boxing's progressed a fair bit. I
still favor Andrade in a lot of the striking exchanges between these two guys. I just believe a lot of the wrestling that Cody Stamann brings into the cage is what does help open up a lot of his striking. Now, could he go in there and jab Andrade to death? Yes, he could. But Douglas Silva de Andrade, to me, is like, if it was the movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and Vitor Belfort was one of the kids. Because he does kind of look like him. He does fight a little bit like him. He's got a very aggressive style. And it is weird to say this, because I would rarely say that the older fighter who has shown cardio deficiencies in the past should go out there and burn really hot early. But I will be curious to see, how does Cody Stamann deal with Andrade if he does start to get hit a little bit in this fight? Because, again, Andrade does a very good job of defending early takedown attempts, forcing the wrestlers to then become strikers, and then once he's able to damage them a little bit, he'll try out bigger, more forced takedown attempts from his opponents, and they'll really make them pay for it. Could that not be a game plan against Cody Stamann? Because I think we have seen guys use that against a guy like Stamann. The big curiosity for me is, can Andrade's cast tank really hold up to the wrestling of a guy like Stamann? Because we've seen Stamann fail the first takedown, fail the second, third, fourth, and fifth, but guess what? He will shoot 4 double-digit takedown attempts, and I do think that's what will help him in this matchup.
Stamann won his last time out against Luan Lacerda. He's a minus 400 favorite in the matchup. He arguably won the first, arguably won the second. He didn't win the third round. He cruised through it. And majority of people out there in the entire world, not just MMA decisions, thought that Luan Lacerda had won. MMA decisions, 5 scored at 29-28 Stamann, 11 scored at 29-28 Lacerda. I scored it for Stamann. I thought he did enough round 1, round 2. But the scary part about it was, Luan Lacerda, as much as the commentary tried to hammer home that he's this big striker from Novo União, he's an accredited jiu-jitsu player like Leonardo Santos out of Novo União. He's not some big striker, but he had a lot of success out of the striking against Stamann. Yeah. His leg kicks were good. His boxing was good, even though Lacerda had his hands at about chest height and he was throwing out just kind of shots like this. It wasn't anything crazy. Stamann did struggle with that. And the fight that he had before that, he landed a really nice kind of check shot against Eddie Wineland, had him rocked, and then he just went out there and landed a big blitz and a flurry, finished him in the first minute. The losses before that were kind of tricky against good competition.
Exactly.
But that's where I say these guys are kind of the gatekeepers to the good but not great. If it's a top 15 to 10 fight, they could have competitive fights on their best days. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to ask you this question, and this is to the fans as well. What's Cody Stamann's best win?
You hate to say Tom Duke.
You're killing a show. I'm going to say it's Bryan Kelleher because he was able to mix in a couple takedowns and showed really good boxing.
Problem is, though, Kelleher wasn't really in his prime.
Douglas Silva de Andrade, I'd say his best win. He pressured Marlon Vera, all 30-27s in that one, or the Morozov fight.
That was a long time ago. I would say the Morozov fight.
The Morozov fight where in the first round, it's kind of that shovel uppercut from Morozov that's able to hit and then drop de Andrade, and then de Andrade is able to drop Morozov. In the second round, it was a 2-round fight in the night, and D. Silva was able to win. And people wonder, Craig, why do you like Douglas Silva de Andrade? Why? Because maybe, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, he spends most of his days walking around in the weeds trying to make his way back home. But if you look at a guy like Silva, as much muscle and as stiff as he is at nearly 38 years old and 135, and think about it this way, he's competed at 145 too in the UFC. Even though he wings a lot of power shots, once he lands, and even if he's able to pump that jab in there and force his opponents back, he can floor it against these guys and still have a lot of success. So for Silva, the losses are against really good fighters. Petr Yan's another one that was able to mix the wrestling in with his striking and get a win there. You look at a guy like Silva, he can get caught in the end of that jab, like against Rob Font, who was able to mix his martial arts. So you look at a fight like this, Cody Stamann is slightly favored in the matchup out of Extreme Couture. We have a look at the Topology votes. Surprise to us, there to you. I'm going to say over under 67.5% for the Spartan Stamann here.
I think it'll be over.
It's going to be over. It is over. So 660 total votes, 75% Stamann, 88% by decision. For the 25% that have De Andrade, 55% by decision, 26% by knockout. He got his second ever submission win. He had that Shogun black belt in the back pocket. He had that, I don't know, I honestly, I shouldn't say that because I don't know if Silva de Andrade has a black belt. As big of an admirer as I am, but he got that win over Morozov by submission. When I look at a matchup like this, Matt, for Cody Stamann with the takedowns, he hasn't had more than 2 takedowns in a UFC fight since he drew against Song Yadong way back years ago. So Stamann hasn't necessarily been able to go to the well with his takedowns like he used to be able to. So in a matchup like this, we'll see if he's able to do it or if they'll be few and far between against De Andrade.
I feel like I pick against your boy every single time we do these videos.
Yes, you do. It's like me with Kennedy and Zechiku.
I'm still picking Cody Stamann in this one, though. And again, I go into this realizing I could be wrong because if this fight ends inside the distance, I think you'd agree with me. Andrade's just going to win the fight if that's the case. If Stamann wins, there's not going to be a lot of people after this fight that go, hey, tell me the next time Cody Stamann fights, I'm going to cancel all my plans so I can avoid that and watch him. I still think the boringness of his fights and the wrestling is going to get him the win. I don't think it will be that active from the top position. You bring up the Yeon fight. Yeon was blasting Andrade with ground and pound. He got into that crucifix. I don't think it'll be a similar game plan to that, but I think we will see those positions, and that's why I do have Cody Stamann in the matchup.
I think Silva de Andrade does enough, and it's not just that bias. Go back through my record. I picked against Douglas Silva de Andrade too, but in the matchup like this, Silva, it was the cut that he had. It looked like a clash of heads against Nurmagomedov in the second round of that fight, or round 1 rather, that started to open it up.
And Stamann's last fight was not a good performance at all.
No, and then it leaked on, so Stamann all of a sudden going from taking on a surprise debutant, not really having a ton of success, which could be like a Lopez versus Ivloyev, to the pact where now he gets to take on a guy 6-4 in the UFC is De Andrade. It's a big matchup. We're split on the pick. Let us know down below in the comments section who you have in the matchup. Some big time fights on this card. The next one is Karl Williams taking on Chase Sherman. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.